So, basically all this really is just an opportunity for, someone to just kind of share whatever is on their mind, whatever something may be troubling them, or something that they may just want to talk about, get off their chest. It doesn't have to be personal. It can be anything, like just something that maybe you're having trouble finding an answer to, something that, could be really anything. It could just be like talking about the things that you really find enjoyable, but preferably, like, the most important thing is that I want it to be something that you want to talk about, not something that I'm, planting in your mind.
So I do have something. I'm definitely curious what you think about it, because it's not often I get to talk to other people who are more like thinkers and like talking about these kind of deep, like, random stuff. I randomly remembered today one of my favorite arguments that I've learned at school. Now, as you know, I don't know if the viewers know, but I did go to a private Christian school, so a lot of the times in some of our classes we would actually learn arguments for Christianity. Currently, I'm agnostic, still believe in, spiritual, supernatural stuff, but not necessarily Christian. What I like about this argument is that it's not an argument for Christianity, rather it's an argument for higher beings. What I like about it is it's an interesting thought experiment, and it's got a lot of, like, it reminds me of a lot of like Eastern ideologies, and, like, ideas revolving around like supernatural and spiritual stuff.
Okay.
I wonder if you've heard of it, or it's the ontological argument by Anselm.
I have not heard of the ontological argument, but I've heard of the word ontology. So feel free to, expound on that.
It's a weird argument, but I love it, and the reason why I love it is because we read it in the original writing, and it was written super dense, and somebody in my class was like, "Oh, Mike with his dyslexia, he's never going to be able to understand it." And I took that as a personal challenge, so I made sure that I was able to understand it to the point where even my teacher, like, I was doing like work outside of class, because that's kind of how my classes were set up. They would give us an argument or a reading or a topic, and we would work on it and then discuss it as a class. My teacher noticed how much effort I was putting into it, and he was like, "Do you want to teach it?" I was like, "Yes." So I ended up teaching the whole class, and that one person who was like, "Oh, he'll never get it," was just sitting there like, it was so satisfying.
Very satisfying.
Basically, he starts off by saying that things have varying degrees of existence, and that existence is assigned a value of greater or lesser. So things that exist in our imagination, so like a unicorn, we can imagine that, but they're not real.
Right.
Those have a value to them, but they're less than something that exists in reality. So something that exists in reality but doesn't exist in our understanding, like we don't know about it yet, we haven't discovered it. So distant planets that we haven't discovered, life forms in the oceans that science doesn't know about yet. Those have a greater value than things that exist in our understanding. And then the thing that is greater than both of those is something that exists in reality and in our understanding. He goes on to say that if a god were to exist, it would be in that value system, that than which nothing greater can be conceived. Basically, it's the greatest thing and nothing greater can be conceived of it. Then he says, like, okay, so we have that understanding. Something that is greater than everything else and nothing can be greater than it. We have that understanding, so that means it exists in our imagination. But if it only exists in our imagination, then that means something physical that exists in both would be greater than it. This controller that I'm holding in my hand would be greater than this concept.
Right.
He's like,
Good.
that's a contradiction. That doesn't make sense.
Mm.
Because it's that than which nothing can be greater. And so he goes on to say, because of that, it must exist in reality as well. And it's kind of like, I don't think it's a very convincing argument, but I love the thought experiment because immediately it reminded me of how in a lot of Eastern traditions, the idea of supernatural beings and deities and demons and ghosts and all of that are all created from the imagination and the consciousness of people.
Right.
Thoughts birth them into reality.
Right.
So his argument boils down to, because we can imagine it, it must be real. And it just reminded me of that. And I just... Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I've never heard of that argument before, but... So basically it's a hierarchy of trying to conceptualize this reality in a way, to put a priority system on the things in, like, to
like there's different types of existence,
right,
and they have like, yeah.
So basically, like, the thing that is physical in your palm, in your hand, that you can see, that's something that is real and tangible. But you can also imagine the thing in your hand as well, which
you have a mental understanding of it, yeah.
Right, which puts it at a higher plane than, say, I guess perhaps a black hole, or I guess God or whatever, if you want to use that example.
Right.
So
anything fiction or anything that exists only in the imagination.
So the thing that came to mind was the idea of, like, what about, like, animated characters? Because, like, they're birthed from the mind, from the imagination, but then they are essentially brought to life, not as something that is tangible, but as something that essentially does exist.
Right, and that's, it becomes even more interesting when you think about VR. Because it all comes down to how you define physical. Like, yes, we're living in a virtual world, but a lot of the definitions, it comes down to semantics, but it reminds me of Descartes and his how he was doubting everything, doubting his senses, and he was trying to find the original truth, the definitive truth, and he just didn't. He proved that you basically could not trust your senses at all. But a lot of what people identify as reality or proof of their existence is through their senses. And virtual reality, sight, hearing, a lot of technology is innovating where you can feel the things that you're touching or picking up.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you can get to the point where you can definingly say that it's physical, then what does that say about its existence? Because right now, like, I'm talking to you, I'm sitting next to you. In my mind, I think of it that way. Even though physically I'm not. Even though, like, in reality,
yes,
I'm sitting on my bed by myself. But in this space, how my brain is conceiving at the moment, my current reality, based off of that interpretation, is that you're right here sitting next to me. And it's weird.
So that could bring to mind, like, well, I guess that kind of bleeds into the idea of what is reality. Because I mean, like, I guess we could argue into the cows come home of, like, if there's a God or not. Like, there's, like, like, yeah, like
I said, the ontological argument is not a very persuasive argument. It has a bunch of holes in it, and even if you go back and read the original text, you can see the points where it's like, right, this is a really cool thought experiment. Okay, it's starting to break down, and then as soon as he finishes by saying, oh, this thing exists in our mind, and it must exist in reality in order to not contradict itself, he then goes on to argue that it must be the Christian God, and it is the most. This man was an Olympic jumper. How he jumped to conclusions with that one. I swear to God, it was hilarious. It was just. So it's not a very good argument, but it's a great thought experiment, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see how that is. Like, yeah, there are a variety of ways to approach that. Like I've had conversations like we can either stay on the topic of God, or we can move into like reality, like how we interpret reality.
Reality, yeah. However you want to bring it.
Nope. Well, I mean, okay. Well,
well, you are leading the interview.
True. Yeah. So I guess we could say, well, I think talking about reality is more interesting given where we are currently. Yeah. So the idea of like conceptualizing like what is reality is something I've personally have really thought about a lot, and just trying to make sense of like to what degree is reality, to what degree is, you know, being in a space where your senses are basically, you know, reduced to like a virtual space. Like, to what extent can reality be reality? Like, to a lot of people, VRChat is very, very real to them. The experiences that they have are very, very real, and they're more real to them than reality, what we would consider reality. And like that's really the paradox where, you know, what if, you know, like the concept of living in a simulation is like something that's kind of like, ever since I've seen The Matrix when I was younger, I was enthralled with the idea of like, well, what if this is all just a simulation? What if this is all just something that is very intricately planned, and like to what degree should I live? Because like what is like how can I best live my life? And the conclusion that I personally reached is that you could strive to be the most interesting person ever. And this is based on like things that I've heard from many people, my own thoughts about it and everything. So like I've kind of like I've listened to a lot of perspectives, and I've had my own, but I feel like the best way to really approach the idea of like even VRChat, like when I'm in VRChat, like I generally just kind of want to be here. I want to stay in this space as if it were my reality. I want to remove the headset and, you know, feel like I am in a dream or like,
right.
And I guess vice versa also.
Step back into another world, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that really comes down to like just how important our corporeal bodies in reality, actually how much that matters to a person, and what do they have anything there? Yeah. Go ahead.
It also speaks volumes of how much desire plays into someone's conceptualization of reality. If you want something to believe that something is reality, you can trick your brain into thinking.
Yes.
People have, like, it's very easy for people to just, not very easy, but there are cases of people who are like, I know that this isn't the way it is, but I'm choosing to believe that, and like, I know I've heard of cases of people who had traumatic experiences, and their brain kind of just like, in order as a coping mechanism, changed their perception of reality, like, and because their desire for that reality to be true, them, that is what's true, and any proof or argument against it isn't there. So like, you know, it's almost as if, and it kind of going back to what you were saying about, you know, when you're in VRChat you want to be in it. It's interesting because like I can scale how much my reality is being taken up by VR. So like, if I'm focusing purely on the situation now and on what I'm seeing and what I'm doing in VR, then my senses kind of like loosen on my corporeal being and on what's going on around me. I forget that I'm feeling the weight of the bed push against me as gravity pushes down on it. And I forget that, you know, my phone is sitting next to me and I have a nightstand there. But now as I'm describing it, that reality becomes more apparent.
Right. Yeah, and I think, like, it could just also come down to the fact that we're just in that reality more so than we are here. And
True.
yeah, and like I know it's a very simple conclusion to draw. It's not like anything intellectual to any degree, but it makes me think because like I'm very, very new to VRChat. Like all things considered, I've only been using VRChat for approximately around 2 months, and I've learned so much just in the time that I've been on this platform. But like I treat every experience in VRChat as something that is genuinely like meant to be an experience. Every time I log in, it's meant to be just like I'm here to talk to people. I'm here to just kind of be in this space and not worry about anything on the outside. And
Right.
but my struggle, or I'm not gonna make this about me. This is about you. But just the idea of, you know, just having lived so long in the other reality and then being introduced to VR, I imagine is something that like that conundrum of the mind seems to be very, very like difficult for some people to overcome. How has it been for you? I mean, you've been in VRChat for 4 years, so like how has that been for you in terms of you, like, I guess, distancing?
Oh, I've only been in VRChat since March, but when I originally joined VRChat, it was on PC. So when I got my VR heads, that was in May. I've only actually been in VR since like May
of last year.
So I'm still fairly new. No, this year.
You said May?
Hmm?
But
like the week of the 18th.
Really? But it's June.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting that I didn't like. I guess I keep forgetting that I haven't met you that long ago, but it just feels like I've known you forever at this point.
Well, we have talked a lot.
True. Yeah. So, that's hard to believe. Like, so when I met you, you had just gotten into VR or got the VR headset. Like,
oh yeah.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah, it was still very new to me.
Interesting. But
it was very new to me.
Yeah. But so do you think there's a distinct difference between being in having the headset and being on PC? I imagine. I mean, obviously there would be, but to the degree of, you know, maintaining a sense of reality and just kind of getting lost in it, like, I guess, how would you compare the two?
I feel like it was more detrimental to my ability of seeing this as reality. Like, obviously, when you're wearing the VR headset, the scale of things becomes way more apparent, and Phantom Sense becomes way more apparent. Everything it gets amplified. But when you've experienced VRChat previously only just on a monitor, where you still have, you know, literally you're still in reality. You're just looking at a screen, it's like you're playing any other game, and when you hear people talking, it's as if you're playing Discord. You're in Discord. Because that's how I originally experienced it, I feel like it's kind of been a slower transition, because my brain, you know, for the most part, unless we're going to a new world, for the most part, I've been going to worlds that I've already been to. And having been in those worlds on PC, it kind of just reminds me, oh, I'm in a virtual place. But the interesting thing is when I do go to new worlds, especially worlds that are big in scale, like I went to a world with Kaze the other day, And she was exercising, so she always goes to these massive worlds, and she went to this massive sci-fi world where literally the whole like skybox, like the whole, so like there was this huge city that you could explore. The past part where you could explore were huge skyscrapers that completely filled the vision completely around, and they were super tall, so they took up most of the skybox too. And just the absolute sheer scale of it, like the fact that it took me 10 minutes just to walk down one street, and there were several streets, like it felt very real.
Yeah.
More real than when I go to Sovereign's Chill or something, because that's a world I've been to many times when I'm just on desktop. When I go to that world, I'm just like, oh, it's like when I played it on PC.
So
it's been weird.
Yeah. So I guess your perspectives of, I guess your ability to get lost in VR is dependent on, one, how often you've been to a world, and two, how large in scale the world is.
Right. Like one of the issues that I find with some worlds is that I get kind of taken out of reality when I see something that's not scaled appropriately. That's also kind of why I like Goru, because when I wear Goru, I'm usually at around the same height that I would be in real life. At least I feel like I am. Like when I stand next to something that's Goru, I don't feel like I'm shorter or taller. That could very easily throw me out of the immersion if like I switch to a character that's really small. I'm just like, oh, this is not what I'm used to.
Yeah. So, well, you can also we can talk about like avatar choice too. So, do you stay in Goro because of how he makes you feel, I guess, immersed in VRChat, or is it because you enjoy the character and people have said to you you have similarities to him?
I think it's mostly that I have similarities to him. I still don't fully see it. A lot of people who I've talked to who know me and know the character do agree that when I get flustered, I am like Goru. And before I even, this was like before I even played Genshin, I got somebody said that I'm like a golden retriever and how like loyal I am, and I don't know if that was a compliment or not, but it's like, oh, thanks for the compliment of calling me loyal, but you also compared me to a dog, so I don't know how I feel.
It could have just been a metaphor, but I think they're mostly focusing on the loyal part of it, but who knows.
Yeah, no, it's also like, he shares the same birthday as me, so I'm just like, yeah, it's mostly just like, it's an easier way to be an extension of myself, and he's a skinny anime boy with fluffy hair, and I'm a skinny dude with fluffy hair, so.
Right.
That's
I
also
see.
helpful. Because the other avatar I used to use a lot, and the reason why I used him a lot was because I liked his toggles and I liked his sit-down animation. That was pretty much it. He was super tall. It didn't bother me as much when I was on desktop, but I have no he was super buff and super tall, the idealized dude, and I hate wearing that avatar now because I'm just like, whenever I pass by an avatar, every time I pass by a mirror, I'm like, oh, that's not me.
Oh, okay. But when you see yourself as Goro, go ahead.
Yeah, so even though I see, Goro, it's a little easier for me to be like, okay, that's me. Especially if it's this Goro with the hoodie and everything, because it's less like, I'm not standing like this, because it's less like the actual video game character. It's kind of like something more separate from that.
Yeah.
Makes it a little bit easier for me to identify more with the avatar than if I was wearing the straight from Genshin Goro avatar.
That's fair. I can understand that. Oh, fuck. Damn it. That was my water bottle.
hope it
And
didn't spill.
no, it didn't spill, but I've completely been taken out of. But that's okay.
Exactly.
We gotta bring it back. Oh gosh, it's so easy to just like the smallest thing could just take you out of the experience of just being in VR, and I try my best to avoid that. And like the way like you choose Goro, because it allows you to kind of like see yourself without actually seeing yourself. I wonder if most people in VRChat choose an avatar because of the toggles, like you said before, or is it because they want their ideal self, or is it because they feel more comfortable in it? Like, if I were to,
I've heard very different
answers.
opinions on it.
Okay.
It varies from person to person. I met a lot of people who go on VRChat because they want to escape reality, and to them it's not an extension. Like, I see VRChat as an extension of reality, in my opinion. It's kind of just like I go to this place to hang out with people I otherwise couldn't, and to experience things that I otherwise. Some people see it as kind of like I go to this place to forget my other reality, to not have to worry about that, and to purely experience this. And people who I've noticed that people who most likely who are more fall into the escaping reality category prefer avatars that fit their ideal self, or that they feel comfortable in, or that they find interesting. There's less of a necessity of how accurate that avatar is to them and how much they can relate to the avatar.
It's a very good observation. I think that's what I would say as well. I think that's very, very accurate to what I would really assess a lot of people to be like. And it's hard to really say like I know for a fact that like I'm here in VRChat to like, I'm not particularly looking to escape per se, but when I'm here, as I do with most things in my life, I prefer to give 100%. So,
right.
So, though I'm not looking to escape, my goal is to, I guess, just kind of be here. And, just kind of why I chose this avatar. Like, I have a couple of avatars that I've found, in my short time here. But, though this avatar looks nothing like me in real life, but I feel like it embodies the aspects of me that I think really, I guess, shine the most.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it fits just my personality and who I am and what I'm about. And so when I look at the mirror, I think that's what it is for me personally. Like, I think because I'm not looking to escape, when I look into the mirror, I've only like for the last like couple of weeks, I've only used this avatar. Mm-hmm. So, but there's also, I guess there's a disconnect of like how much do I see me?
Right.
And I think that interferes with my perspective on reality. Like, I guess what do you?
The more you use the avatar, the more that connection will strengthen, I feel.
Yeah.
And you even notice that with your perception of others. If I have a few friends who purely stick to like one avatar, and occasionally they'll change, or they'll change the toggles on their avatar, but almost always I can see them using one avatar and one set of toggles. And that's it. And I've just grown to associate them. Even people who I have one friend. Most of the friends I made on VRChat are people who I've barely met on VRChat, and that's it. But I haven't played with him on here in a while. I don't know if he plays VRChat anymore. But I used to play a bunch of different games with him on Discord. So my understanding of him was his name, username, and his voice, right?
Mm.
But when we started playing VRChat, he started using one avatar and that's it. and it was like a small little Lego stormtrooper. And he would always use that avatar, and so whenever I see him
That's
as
what you
the
associate.
stormtrooper, right, I could, like, if I had usernames disabled, which I don't, I have them on, it does help with the immersion if you have them turned off, and I just like knowing what people's usernames are. I'm
Yeah.
not good at remembering shit.
Yeah, same
So
here.
it's like, so when I like, but I could have it turned off, and I could pick him out in a crowd, because I know, oh, there's the stormtrooper. There's my friend.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Do you think, like, so using the same avatar can definitely help with just kind of like association, and that's why I've chosen to really stick with this avatar, because I really, really love it. I've loved it since the moment I saw it, and yeah, so I've just kind of stuck with it. But do you think there's like a little bit? There's like another layer of like, just, I guess, personal understanding of like, you should use an avatar because well, actually, fuck, I lost my train of thought.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, that's not great. But what was I saying? Yeah, go ahead.
I feel as though it all depends on your intentions. If you want to feel fully immersed, then it fully depends on what helps you. I feel like it's different for every person. Sometimes it helps them to not have any, like, I know of some people who any like resemblance to their reality takes them out of the immersion. So like they try and go for things that are completely opposite of them, or completely, like an avatar that's like a full-on mech, or an avatar that's completely like fictitious, because it allows them to more easily suspend disbelief.
Yes. Yeah,
so it all depends.
Yeah, like, and that's really interesting thing about VRChat for me. Like, many people use this platform for a variety of different reasons, and like that's really what I find most fascinating. Like, everyone has their own reason for being here. Everyone has their own motivations for using this platform, and I think a lot of people also have their own challenges and their own demons to conquer. Just kind of be frank about it. Like, and I think a lot of people who use VRChat have really found a place where they can feel like, they can be themselves, or just kind of get away from, the difficulty of reality. I guess, like, so what does that look like for you? Like, why did you start using VRChat in the first place, and how has your reasoning evolved over the years?
So originally, I think I told this story first time you streamed. I think so. It was back the most recent time I had COVID. I had gotten over the actual sickness for like pretty early on, but because the area I was in was getting a lot of high numbers, and school and work, they want to be really safe. And so I was really struggling with getting the right tests. And to make things worse, my mother also ended up getting COVID. Even though I was okay, she was sick, and I could still carry those germs, so I still had to self-isolate and everything. But because of that, I was at home, perfectly healthy, bored out of my mind. And I was getting tired of the social interaction that I was used to, which was just Discord, sitting and listening to my friends play video games. Because I don't really play most of the games they play. I usually just sit in there enjoying the conversation every once in a while. And I was getting very tired of it. I wanted more.
Yeah.
With school and work, I'm constantly interacting with people, and even if it's not, conversations that go beyond small talk, it's still social interaction, and it kind of like checked off that box and filled that need. But because I wasn't getting that, I was like, I need to talk to people. I tried Omegle. It was fun, but the atmosphere
What
on
was it?
Omegle is extremely
Omegle?
different. Omegle?
What is that?
You don't know what Omegle is?
No.
Oh, okay. It's okay. So it's a website. It's been around for ages. I went on that website when I was way too young. I should not have been going on that website. It's a website.
Yeah.
Where you could either have your camera on or off, but most people have it on, and the mic's on, and it randomly connects you to a random person at any part of the world, and you can talk to them for a bit, and then you can move on to another person. Think like speed dating video call, but it wasn't like a dating site. It was just, talk to strangers. Literally, when you go to the website, on the banner it says talk to strangers.
Yeah, it's basically the two time to
there.
talk world.
Right, no, it's exactly like that, yeah.
Yeah.
The atmosphere on there is very interesting. I had some good conversations with artists. Like, you can put interests like in there, and then anybody who also has that interest, you're more likely to connect with them. So I put art and drawing and stuff like that. I had some good conversations with artists and people who are into music. Like, you can meet a lot of cool people on there, but you could also meet a lot of trolls and stuff like that. It's funny how you could, a lot of the personalities that you see on Omegle, anyone in your chat who's been on Omegle, like, the best way I could describe VRChat, think of Omegle but way more intimate and way more immersive. There's more to do. There's more like in Omegle, you see your own camera, and then you see their camera, and you could tell that you're both sitting in a chair, and it's like a video call. VRChat, you get similar personalities, similar experiences at times, but it's like this person is physically here. You're in a room with them. You're in a building. Like, it's weird. So I tried Omegle, and it wasn't satisfying. The big issue with it is a lot of the people there, thankfully this doesn't carry over to VRChat, but not as bad, but a lot of people on Omegle are horny guys trying to find girls to talk to, girls trying to find guys to give them attention, trolls, the occasional guy who's just showing up too much, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
Or people who just skip for no reason. Like, if they don't find you interesting, or if they don't find you attractive, they're just gonna skip. That's very common on Omegle. And so you could sit there for 15-20 minutes and just being skip, and then you'll have one good conversation, and then one person would have to go, and then you would just go back to being skip. And so it was so exhausting. You'd be on there for like an hour and only have one good conversation that lasted like 10 minutes. And I was like getting very tired of it, and I remember hearing that VRChat could be played on PC and that it was free. So I was like, you know what? Let me check the specs. Let me see if I can run it. So I did, and I downloaded it, and immediately the first world I went to was Sovereign's Chill.
Oh.
And yeah, it was the first world I went into. There weren't too many people in there, but there was one person. And she was like, oh, hey, like, I was like, yeah, where is everybody? Like, is this game dead or something? And she was like, oh, no, this game is not dead. This world is just, everyone's in the secret room.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. She was like, are you new? She could just tell instantly that I was new.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm new. She was like, okay, cool. And so she brought me over to her friends who were in the secret room, and I just sat down and talked to them, and, two of the people from that group came, like, basically my guides through VRChat, and I became good friends with them. Haven't played with them on VR in a while, but we still, like, are keep in touch on Discord and Snapchat and stuff. But yeah, for me, VRChat was kind of just like social interaction when I couldn't get it. And as time progressed, it's stayed mostly the same. It's kind of devolved though. When originally was I want to meet new people, it's kind of devolved into I want to keep up with the people I've already met. Very rarely I go to new worlds by myself to just meet new people. And I think that does come down to it's felt more real now because I've gotten used to it. It feels more real. Like, it's easier to kind of get exhausted now when I'm trying to meet new people.
Yeah.
Like, previously when I first started, I could go to a new world and I can, talk to random people and all that stuff, and if it didn't work, I go to the next world because it was all so new and interesting. Even when it didn't work out, even when I didn't meet people, I was still having fun. But now it's like, the novelty has kind of gone away. And so if I go to a world trying to meet new people and all I find is people who are in their own little clique and they don't want to interact with anybody else, despite being in a public world, and trolls, I'm just like,
Yeah. I see. So you came to VRChat for the social interaction, but like you were getting that at your job before because you were working. So I guess what was the difference? Like you said, you were getting the social interactions, so.
Right, so like I said, originally I wasn't getting that because I was stuck at home. I was stuck in self-isolation.
Oh, right, because you're isolating. Okay, so you couldn't even go to work. Right. Okay, gotcha.
Right. And, I think this can be, a lot of people can say this, like, especially after high school, even with school and work, you'll have a lot of acquaintances, but you won't have a lot of friends.
True.
You'll have a lot of people that you could talk to in those certain settings, but they're not people who you would, invite out to eat and sit and talk for hours. Thankfully, that's changed a little bit. I have a few friends at work who, we have a small, I have a friend who works with me, who I was friends with him before he started working there. And then one of my new managers, I got really close with him. The three of us, we have a tradition where after a closing shift, the week that we get paid, we go to a 24-hour just a place to eat, and we'll just sit and get food, and like we'll sit and talk for hours, just the three of us, which is nice. I'm glad that I've actually gotten a friend at work rather than just an acquaintance, because small talk is fun, but without that depth, without that connection, like you can have a bunch of small talk, but it's still not going to satisfy the same itch that sitting down and talking to you about whatever comes to mind scratches.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you completely. Like, and that's generally like why like this is like doing this is something that I would like to do, because I feel like there's that depth that's missing. I think a lot of people are just missing that opportunity to really kind of dig in and have those meaningful conversations with one another, because even though the novelty for a lot of people may have worn off, there's still that. It's strange that people who've been using VRChat for so long still feel that fear of like interacting with other people, and just don't even want to like put themselves out there, because even still, like, despite all of their experience, there's still that fear of like, well, what if they don't like me? What if I seem awkward to them? What if I say something that offends them? There's always those doubts that linger.
From what I've noticed, I've seen this in a lot of other people I know personally. This is how I feel as well. I still meet new people, and I still love meeting new people. But the way I meet new people has changed than how it was when I first started VRChat. Like I said, when I first started VRChat, I would just go to a random world. I would just like look at the list, pick something that looked interesting, and then I would find a group of people and talk to them, and I would judge, like, okay, are they the type of people who likes meeting new people? Are they looking to meet new people? Are they like in their own conversation? If not, I'm gonna jump in, and if they are cool, I'll give them a friend request. Now it's like I'll go to a world with a friend, or I'll join a friend and they'll be with their friends, and then that's how I meet new people. And I still love doing that, and I don't get that fear when I'm doing that. There's something about someone else being there neutralizes that fear. It's when I go in there alone and I'm just like, alright, I need to, good first impressions, I need to.
Yeah.
I also think it might be because, like, if you see one person come up to you and talk to you and your group of friends, it's more likely for it to come across as creepy or weird than if a group of people did. If a group of people did, then like, oh, they were already friends, and they're being, especially if they're being respectful. Or a single respectful guy can come up and you can still have your doubts. But like a respectful guy and his friends, and they're all being respectful, like it's a little more disarming. It's a little more easy to interact.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to like a lot of my first experiences were with Khaleesi, and it just made more sense for us to go together. But I also knew that I wanted to be able to walk. I wanted to be able to be independent. So I've done my own thing, hopped into numerous worlds, and I suppose I guess I do have an advantage for potentially running into people given how I look. But regardless of that, there's still that concern of like, well, maybe I won't meet anyone here. Maybe no one will be very interesting. But I've somehow have been very, very lucky. And somehow I always meet at least one interesting person. So
there are a lot of interesting people in VRChat.
Which I love that about it. It's super, super cool.
There's never a lack of interesting people. You just need to, if you can't find them in the place you're at, you just need to go somewhere different. Sometimes it's even like, sometimes I'll go from like one instance of a world to another instance of the same world, just because like maybe the people in that world are less interesting, and I'm just, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I can definitely agree with that. So
I'm going back to the discussion on reality. I was kind of thinking about this, and it's like, I remember I was watching, it was a very short snippet, it was a YouTube Shorts. It was an interview between Keanu Reeves and I can't remember who the interviewer was, but it was an interview with Keanu Reeves, and
the man
Keanu
himself
was talking. Exactly, he was telling a story about one of his friend's nieces had watched The Matrix, and he asked her, if you found out that the world you were living in was a simulation, would you care? And she goes, no. And he was like, and the interviewer goes, how did you react to that? How does that make you feel? And Keanu goes, that's awesome. And I loved it because I was like, yeah, no, it's like, it's interesting that, the whole idea behind The Matrix was like, oh, I want reality. Like, this is a simulation. I want what's real, even if what's real is shitty. And, part of my intellectual brain and logical brain is like, yes, I agree with that. But it's interesting. I feel as though more people in my generation and in our generation don't care if it's real or not. And I feel kind of like popularity of VRChat and VR as a whole kind of speaks to that people are willingly putting themselves in a simulated world. There's more affinity with it. Like the whole thought experiment of like, what if the world you're living in was fake? It's like, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. I think there definitely is a correlation with people who are on the younger spectrum with having just more openness to diving into, or not really caring about whether the reality that they live in is real or not. I think that where that comes from is just the day and age that we live in. They've had the benefit of growing up with the internet as nearly a full-fledged entity. And for most people, the internet isn't much different from when they were old enough to finally use it to what it is now. The only difference is the more opportunities, like VRChat, that are made available due to advances in technology. So when your entire life is locked into a screen, when your entire being and much of your connections are accessed through a literal screen, I think that kind of dulls the fear of like, well, if this is all a simulation, then I mean, who cares? I'm just staring at a screen all the time anyway. So I'm already like in those worlds, in those games, anyway. So it just become another extension.
It reminds me of. No, I'm not gonna act like this is my own idea. I did hear that from somewhere, but I'm blanking on who I heard it from. It was like, it wasn't a TED Talk. It was like a TED Talk style seminar, But I remember I had watched that, and then I had this interaction. It was one of my mother's friends, and she was, doing what every person of that generation does, complains about our generation. They were saying, oh, these kids, they care so much about what happens on social media and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, one, social media has grown exponentially. Two, side note, don't act like you don't care. You get pissed off when Aunt May posts something on Facebook that she shouldn't have, so whatever. And three, it is real to them. If their friend from high school posts something on Instagram that makes them look bad, the effects of that are tangible. The effects of that are effects.
Yes.
It's a causation, there's an effect, they experience it. It doesn't matter if it's on a screen, it is real, and they are experiencing it. And yes, they are more in it and more immersed in it, which is why they feel like it's more real. And there is a whole conversation to be had about the hell behind it. I don't like social media personally, but I get it. I don't like it's like it. What's the term? It rubs me the wrong way when I hear people being like, "Oh, kids shouldn't have social media." I don't like the idea of limiting information. I think we should be more conversational and more educational rather than restrictive when dealing with these kinds of things, because especially now with how dependent society is getting on social media and the internet, I feel like I've grown up around sheltered kids, and it is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So
you don't want to shelter them.
Something to be said, right? There is something to be said about kids who are exposed to social media from a young age and who get way too obsessed with it. Like, no kid should be having to deal with that kind of anxiety that young.
100%.
It's involved with social media, but you can't, dismiss it. You can't dismiss like I don't care about social media that much, but despite that, when a friend of mine posts something on Instagram or posts something, I don't have many social medias, but like it still feels real, it still feels tangible. Like it's part of reality.
Yeah. I think older people, in the 40s and such, I think those people have they struggle to comprehend the rippling effects of such technologies, and rather than thinking of ways of how to manage what is already in existence, of like what kids have already grown up with, they want to restrict them, which I also disagree with. Right. And the funny thing is, I also don't care for social media, but I do use it. But I've actually distinctly have chosen not to use social media for everything that I'm doing here, because I don't really want to go through the hassle of dealing with it and maintaining that. I just want to be here, right, and have people assess for themselves whether I'm someone that they want to hang out with or spend time with and be entertained by. So that's right. I leave that up to them, but I am on the same page as you. I do think that there needs to be just a stronger conversation about the resources that we make available to children, so that they have the means to manage their the effects of social media on them, which, as you said, causes anxiety, heightens depression. And it really does have a significant effect on people, and that's why mental health issues have been drastically on the rise in the last decade or so. And it's so frustrating that people don't quite grasp that, and the fact that the things that happen on the internet are real, and they are processed differently from people who haven't grown up with it. It's just going to be processed differently, perceived differently, because their perception of how they've grounded themselves in reality is much different from the overexposure in most cases that most kids have grown up with over a period of time.
Right. And like I said, I don't think the answer is complete restriction of it.
True.
You know, again, going to private school, you experience a lot of people with varying levels of strict parents. You know, I had somebody who didn't even have a phone. We graduated high school and he didn't have a phone. Not even a phone.
Well,
And I asked him, like, what about an emergency? And he was like, my parents are like, if you're in an emergency, figure it out yourself.
huh.
I was like, you drive. What if you get in an accident and you need to call 911? Like, that's horrible parenting.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know, and when you have a small school like I did, there was 400 kids in the entire school. My grade was 30 people. When you have a small school like that, you meet the parents, and I met his parents, and I was like, you guys are terrified. Like, they didn't want him having a phone because they were scared that the second he got a phone, he was gonna get into drugs and into sexting and all that stuff. And I was like, I was just like, have some more trust in your kid, or have some more trust in your parenting. Like, if you've raised him well, then he's not gonna do that stuff. Like,
I mean,
it's
you've
just
already
so
sheltered him forever, like for his entire life. Like, what do you expect him to do with his lack of knowledge already?
Yeah. Right, yeah, and that's, you know, I feel like that's even more dangerous. Like, you know, I sometimes still, when I talk about having friends that I only know online, even to this point now, my parents are still like iffy about it. Like, oh, what if they're catfishing you? Or what if this? And I was like, Ma, I've been dealing with people online since like 6th grade when I got my Xbox and started playing online games. Over the years, I've learned how to tell if someone's being genuine or not. Like, I can, like, especially if it's, you know, something a bit more intimate, like voice calls or VRChat, you could tell when somebody's faking, or when somebody's fishing for something. Like I've gotten good at reading those intentions, and that purely comes from getting a little too close to the people who had bad intentions. Purely because, you know, I was learning, and that's just what happens when you're on the internet. If I had, you know, without that knowledge, you know, preferably, like, if I had kids, I wouldn't want them learning that lesson from experiencing it. I would want to tell them, like, hey, these are the kind of things to look out for. This is what be careful of. These are the type of people to stay away from, and these are ways to know if they're that kind of person. Go do your thing on the internet. There's bound to be new shit that I don't know about, and you'll learn about it. Just be smart. Use your common sense. Don't talk to people if you don't like talking to them. If they make you feel uncomfortable, don't agree to anything you don't want to agree to, and just go and be you, and we're good. If you have any questions, concerns, don't be afraid to tell me. And like, that's all I would do. Well, that's not all I would do, but that's how I would handle it. I'd be like, hey, like, rather than just saying, here, give me your phone, I'm taking this, you're not getting it back until you're 20 or some shit. They need to learn those skills eventually.
They do, and you should allow kids to make mistakes. They should be free to make errors, and hopefully, you know, the parenting that the restrictions that are in place are there for a reason. And like, I think a lot of parents fail to realize that, like, when it comes to parenting, if you're gonna put restrictions on your kid, you should explain to them why the restrictions are there. Don't just put them there.
Oh yeah.
But most parents don't even want to do that.
The other thing, I know it's like, so many things just pull me out of reality for a second. 1 second. Okay. Ooh. Alright, so my mom was walking by.
Oh.
Sometimes she opens the door to like check on me. Wanted to be ready for that.
Yeah, totally understandable.
Yeah. But right, one thing that always kind of like bothers me is that, like, I get it, you know, respect, talking back, but like, there's a difference between being disrespectful and just asking to know. Like, if you punish your kid and they're asking you why, give them a chance, give them a reason, give them an explanation. Because if they're asking why, then it's clear they don't understand what they did wrong.
Exactly.
And they're not going to learn from the punishment.
They'll just learn to resent you.
And on top of that, right, yeah, exactly. And on top of that, like, give your kids a chance. Like, my parents did a lot of stuff. Like, my parents weren't too punishing. It wasn't often that I would get punished, but to be fair, I never really did anything that bad. And when I did do something bad, all it takes is a stern talking to, and I'm just like, I'm sorry. I was a very, like, I wasn't a bad kid. But, oh, hold on, I'm losing my train of thought. I need to rewind it back. Oh, yes, but I knew people who had really strict parents and who would punish them all the time. And, like, the punishments wouldn't make sense, or it'd be more detrimental. I knew somebody who she didn't clean her room, and her parents took away her computer because she uses her computer a lot. So they were like, oh, she uses this a lot, I'm gonna take away her computer. And she was like,
well, how can I do my work?
Computer. And they were like, right. And they would not listen to her, and they're like, we don't care. I'm just like, they wouldn't let her speak. That was the thing. They were like, no talking back to us, go to your room. And like, anytime she tried to speak, they would just like take another thing away. And so she was just like, you know what, all right, fine, I'll get a bad grade. And then it was a horrible cycle, because then they would see her grades and they would take away her shit again.
Yeah, that's...
Give your kids a chance. Like, I'm glad my parents are understanding, but to be fair, I love my mom. She's a Greek New Yorker. She's loud. She yells a lot. In my family, our understanding, our method is say what you need to say what you want to say it how you want to say it, yell if you need to, but never hold a grudge. So like, I'll like to my friends, it sounds like I'm yelling at my parents, but it's just, they're Greek New Yorkers. You naturally talk louder. If I don't talk loud, she's just going to talk over me.
Right.
And even if it's not like we're disagreeing, if she's asking me a question or like there was one time where she was like, oh, what do you want to eat for dinner? And she was like rambling all this stuff, and I was trying to answer, so I was like, so I had to raise my voice, I had to yell back, and my friend was in the car. He was like, afterward, when it was just us, and I was like, bro, if I yelled at my mom like that, I would get beat. I was like, yo, what are you talking about? We were just talking. Yeah. He was like, what? But
cultural differences.
What I like about my parents, is that there were times where they would be like, I'm punishing you for this, and I was like, it doesn't make logical sense. Like, I get why you're punishing me, but it's punishment. It doesn't make logical sense.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to do this. Like, I already see where I fucked up. And sometimes they were just like, you're just trying to get out of it, so it wouldn't work. But sometimes they'd be like, okay, you're right, you're fair, that's fair. But as long as you know that what you did was wrong, that's enough. If you do it again, we're taking it away, but what is that? I was like, that's fair. Yeah, there are still some things that my parents are my mom is unreasonable on. Like, I've had a lot of bad experiences with college. Horrible professors, way too much workload. There was one term I had 2 drawing classes and an English class. And the drawing classes I was doing great in. The English class, however, they would assign 2 chapters of reading, like, every day. On top of the 2 chapters of reading that we had to do every day, we would have to respond 3 times to a discussion post and propose our own question. And they couldn't be short 1-answer responses. They had to be 6 to 12 sentences responses.
Yeesh.
Every day. And there were assignments every week for writing a short summary of the chapters you read that week, on top of the term-long papers that we had to write. We had 3 term-long papers. On top of all that stuff, we also had 3 other things. three big papers that we need to write. Now, I get extremely overwhelmed when it comes to having that much homework. Especially with my dyslexia, it is nearly impossible for me to read 2 chapters within a day and still have the mental capacity to do all that other stuff.
Right.
And so naturally, I'm like, I went to my teacher and I talked to him and I was like, look, this is too much. Like for me, like, I don't know, like, I'm assuming you've been teaching for a while. I'm assuming like if you're still working and doing this method, then it probably works. But for me, it doesn't. And he was like, look, if you focus on the heavier weighted stuff, I don't care if you don't turn in these things. If you focus on the heavier weighted stuff, you're still gonna pass. You're not gonna get a great grade, but you're still gonna pass. In my mind, I was like, okay, I'd rather get a shit grade but still pass than fuck my mental state by overworking myself and potentially fucking my other classes by overworking myself in this one particular class. So I was very logical in my decision to do this. This wasn't me being lazy or trying to avoid doing homework. I was just like, okay, I'm going to focus on the long-term papers, the week-long things. I'm not going to do the discussion posts unless I'm somehow feeling extra. I have a lot of energy that day, and my brain allows me to do it. And so by the time the class ended, all my grades for the big essays were good, and I passed. I passed with a C because those zeros stacked up on this discussion post. And I was like, okay, I passed, I got my credits, my money wasn't wasted, all is good. Until my mom asked to see my transfer for that past term. And like, you know, I've heard people make arguments of like, oh, why do parents need to see their kids' grades? And I'm like, look, she paid for that term. She paid for those classes.
Yes.
Even if, you know, like, she has a right to see them. It's her money. She has a right to see them. So I was like, alright. Like, I knew what shithole I was getting myself into, but I was alright, here you go. And she was looking at them and was like, incomplete, incomplete, incomplete. And I was like, she was like, what is all this? And I tried to explain to her, but she was just so furious. So I was like, I got my credits. But she was like, oh, it's not enough. But she's still locked in that whole thing of like, grades mean something. In college, grades don't really mean shit. As long as you get your degree. Like,
yeah, mostly, unless you're shooting to like be valedictorian,
right.
sum cum laude. Yeah,
exactly.
It doesn't really matter.
Especially when you're going for an art major like me. Like most places for looking for artists, they don't even hire you based off of your degree. They hire you based off of your portfolio. But they're not gonna give a shit if I got a C in English class.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta prioritize
So
the things that
was
make the most sense. Yeah.
But she would not listen to it. She would not take it. And just anything involving school, she's very strict about. Like, there's no arguing with her, and it's very frustrating. This past term, I had a teacher his teaching method was just horrible. All of his assignments were weighted the same. They were all 20 points. But it would basically be like 3 assignments smushed into one. And he would want you to answer in one cohesive paragraph, which was one difficult because he'd be asking 2 completely different questions in the same assignment. So you have to find a way to be able to bridge these 2 topics in a seamless way. Because he'll take points off if you don't. And I was like, this isn't an English class. This is like sociology class. Like, I shouldn't have to be thinking about good paragraph transitions in this. But so there was that, and he was such a stickler about everything. Like, you can put, you know, he was expecting 6 to 12 sentence responses, which was completely unreasonable with the amount of questions he was asking, and he expected you to answer every question. It wasn't like, that was the other thing that bugged me. He would say in the beginning of the assignment, responses 6 to 12 sentences. I was like, okay, so he's looking for a paragraph. Then he would list like 20 questions. Short questions, but 20 questions. I was like, okay, and I read through all the questions, like, okay, I get the concept behind these questions. He's basically asking me to talk about this topic. And so I'd write a short 6 to 12 paragraph responding to that topic and addressing that topic as a whole and, you know, answering some of the questions. But he'd be like, you didn't do the assignment. He he legitimately gave me a 0 when I did that.
Huh.
He was like, you have to answer every single one of these questions, but in a paragraph. It was so frustrating. And then his quizzes, despite being open book, it was more so just an issue of like his formatting. He would have horrible typos, to the point where like they were all multiple choice. At multiple times in a quiz, he would have such bad typos that 3 out of 4 of the answers were the same thing.
Wow. Shows how much he cared about. Yeah.
Right. And then sometimes like the question would just be worded so horribly that it's left for interpretation, which is like, you know, leaving a question up for interpretation is great when they can actually respond to it, but on multiple choice, ooh, no. Like, you need to be clear with what you're asking on multiple choice, because they can't explain their thought process.
Huh.
Like, if you leave it up to interpretation and they can explain their thought process, you can evaluate their thought process and be like, okay, they understand what they're talking about, which is what I'm trying to evaluate. They didn't understand how I meant it, but they still understood the concept. On multiple choice, it's either right or wrong. That's it.
Yeah. Well, that just really goes to show that, you know, there are some people, adults rather, who think that, you know, they are the know-it-alls, they are the authorities on everything, and that they don't really have to understand or comprehend that not everything that they have done works for everyone. That people learn different ways, people respond to different things in different ways, and it's important to keep that in mind. But yeah,
it was just so confusing, because in person he was such a great guy. I do not hate that teacher at all. He is a nice guy. He's super understanding. Like, he's like, I went to him and I was like, hey, look, you gave me a 0 on this, and I basically explained to him, like, this is what I thought you were looking for. And he was like, oh, I could see why you thought that. That's not what I was looking for. You can redo it and I'll give you full credit, whatever. But this is how I'm looking for it. He's super understanding. Like there was one time I went to him and I was like, dude, look, I feel like shit today, mentally. Is it alright if I don't come to class? Like, I sent him an email. And he was like, oh yeah, of course. Like, I won't even count it as a tardy. I'll just put it down that you came in today. He was a super nice, understanding person. It's just, I don't know if he was a lot older. The point where there was one point in class where I thought he was about to keel over and die.
Huh.
So I don't know if maybe it was just like, you know, lack of technical expertise that kind of restricted his ability to make good assignments and quizzes or what, but it was just him on his assignments and him in class, completely different people.
Maybe he changed, but his methods didn't. His methods are still old.
That's possible.
Yeah. But that's really all the time that we have, boss.
Oh shit! Right. Wow.
Yeah, it's already been a little over an hour. So
oh wow.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. Time just flew.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was really, really cool. Like, I learned a lot more about Voss and like how he thinks and the things that he finds interesting, and you know, the stuff that he generally has like gone through to kind of get him to be here in VRChat, but also to just, you know, be the kind of person that he is in general and inform the opinions about reality and you know, just opinions on people in general. He's really worked very hard to truly become his own person, and that's something I genuinely admire. And yeah, you know, Voss is a good friend of mine, so you know, it's always really good to like learn more about him and to just, you know, have a nice chat. But yeah, this is just kind of a sample of like what I'd like to do. And though this was an authentic one-on-one with Voss, he basically did this as a favor for me. But basically, if this is something you'd like to do with me, if you'd just like someone to really talk to and share your thoughts and concerns with, just someone who's like genuinely listening and thinking as well, this is what you can get if you decide to become one of my patrons. So if that's interesting to you, you can type in !patron in the chat if you're on Twitch. And if you're on YouTube, the link to my Patreon is right on my main page. You really can't miss it. And yeah, if you are interested in this, you can definitely go ahead and engage with that. If not, that's okay. And yeah, hopefully, this was a good experience, and hopefully you all enjoyed the chat. And yeah, I'll be looking forward to the next time I have a chance to chat with either someone who is a patron or a friend of mine. I think I will be having another conversation with a friend of mine next Tuesday. So I'll probably be talking to that person on Tuesday, and I won't be streaming it, but I'll be recording it, so it will go on YouTube, and this will also be cut separately and put on YouTube. So hopefully, you enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to next time. So
I just wanted to say,
What's
if
up?
you are interested in doing this, you don't have to talk as much as I did. Like, you don't need, don't feel pressured into talking as much as I did about some of the stuff. Like, if you're a little more, if you just want to come and propose something and then talk back and forth or whatever, it is a very fluid and natural thing. So you don't be too scared that you're like, oh, if I do this, I'm gonna have to sit and talk.
Exactly. Yeah. This is meant to be just a chance for you to be open and just share your thoughts. And you, again, like Voss said, that was actually a very good point, Voss. Yeah, don't feel pressured to have to talk a lot. This is really just a time for you to be open and get some of your thoughts and ideas and things that keep you up at night, or just interaction that you had on VRChat that you really can't figure out or make sense of. It's just a good chance to have a genuine conversation with someone who is genuinely listening, and regardless of how much you want to talk about it. So yeah, we'll figure it out, and that's the beauty of these. So yeah, thanks for tuning in.